She's a cloud that holds the clouds. She's the lady of the house, a blind believer in all I dare to be. There's no safer place I've found than the shoulder of her white nightgown. I've got the best and worst of her in me, and I'd share if I could, so the wars would all be over, 'cause she'd raise us all as friends, and no one would ever wonder if someone wanted them. We'd walk on grass that's greener, and our cares would be much freer if the world had a mother like mine. She's our Father's one great love. She's the one He wanted most. She's the light in the window of the house I grew up in. She takes a midnight call. She's the bravest of us all. Still she sings in the garden that she let her hair down in. So the wars would all be over, 'cause she'd raise us all as friends. No one would ever wonder if someone wanted them. Tonight would be much easier, and our dreams would be much deeper, if the world had a mother like mine. Don't go away, don't go away from me. Oh, I understand she's a helping hand, still I have to say, she's the sky that holds the clouds. She's the lady of our house. We all need her, but no one more than me. So the wars would all be over, 'cause she'd raise us all as friends. No one would ever wonder if somebody needed them. And the grass would be all greener, and the dishes would be cleaner, if the world had a mother like mine. If the world had a mother like mine.
Good morning. We're the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Elkhart, a welcoming community encouraging religious freedom, nurturing individual spiritual and ethical growth, celebrating diversity, and promoting a just and sustainable world. My name is Ken Claiborne, and I'm a member of the board of this congregation. We'd like to welcome you all to our virtual service this morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning and happy Mother's Day. Welcome to the worship service for Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Elkhart. My name is Amy Kaliza DeBeck, and it is my privilege and honor to serve you, UFE, as your minister. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and we have just a few things to tell you about to keep look for. Next Sunday, May 16th, there will be a regular service. We still say 10 a.m. You can watch it anytime, but we're remembering when we were all together and it started at 10. So there is the regular service, followed by a brief coffee hour at 11:30 with its own Zoom link, followed by the annual meeting at noon with its own Zoom link. I hope that you'll be with us for all of those things. On Saturday, May 22nd, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., you are invited to visit home. Come to 1732 Garden Street between 11 and 2. Walk through the building, walk around the grounds. We hope that it's a wonderful time for you to get reacquainted, and as we are going to move through the summer, having some small groups inside and outside, looking for the day that we can finally be together in worship. We have no idea when that is, but certainly we can gather soon in small groups. Let's kick that off with visiting home, Saturday, May 22nd, 11 to 2. There will be emails and phone calls about this yet to come. And in June, let's not forget that we are Unitarian Universalists who love our June meetings. Patty French has assured us that Chris French and his group will be with us online for a jazz brunch on June 20th. And right after that, from June 23rd to the 27th, General Assembly is completely online this year. And we hope that you will find some time to be in on some of those events. During General Assembly, we often have really great worship services, and the Where lecture this year includes Stacey Abrams, and it'll just be a great time, and it's completely online. It's usually centered around a city, so this will be different, and we hope to see you next week and the weeks to come.
We ring the gong 3 times, once for those who came before us and built a place for us. Once for those who are with us now. And once for those who will come after us and build on the dream. Our chalice lighting is by Selena Fox. We kindle this flame for mothers and foremothers, past, present, and future. We kindle this flame in celebration of community and its generations. We kindle this flame with respect and support for the greater circle of life of which we all are part.
Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. To dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This is our covenant.
On this Mother's Day, I'd like to share with you a reading by my friend and colleague Lisa Kemper. The piece is called Circle of Care. In religious community, we share our joys and our triumphs, our sorrows and our broken places. In this circle of care, we make space for the complexity of life, the myriad experiences that bless and break our hearts. The truth of human experience dictates that on any given day, we each come to the table with hearts in different places. It is especially so on this day, invented to honor women who nurture. In this circle of care, we honor the truth that mothering is not and never will be quantified in one single descriptor. Mothering can be elusive or infuriating, fulfilling or confusing, commonplace or triumphant. It exists in the everyday experiences of each person. There is no human being that is not connected to or disconnected from a mother. And so we honor the complexity of experience, writ large in flowered platitudes, but here in this space, laid bare, honoring the truth in each of our hearts. There is room for all in this circle. If you have carried a child or children, whether or not they came to be born, we see you. If you have fervently wished to do so, and circumstances of fate made it impossible, we see you. If you love children we cannot see, whether because of death or estrangement, we see you. If you never wanted to be a mother, we see you. If you are happy to mother other people's children, as an educator, an auntie, or a foster parent, we see you. If your mother hurt you, physically or emotionally, we see you. If you had no mother at all, we see you. If your mother is or was your best friend, we see you. If your gender says you are not a mother, and yet you take on the role of nurturer, we see you. If you wonder whether your mothering has been enough, we see you. And if yours is a different truth altogether, we honor your unspoken story. There is room for all in this circle. May it be so today and always. Mother's Day, sometimes it is really simple. There's a child, the child gives mama a card, and it's complete. But sometimes we see this day coming and wish we could run the other way to not think about all of the baggage associated with the occasion. This year, I wish for all of you that it be a simple, happy day. I have a 21-year-old and an almost 18-year-old, and I find myself looking at babies thinking that I'm grateful for being a mom, and maybe someday I'll be a grandma. And mostly I think, I don't know how I lived through those years. And for all of you with little ones at home, you have my immense admiration. Almost every day for the past year, I've lived with some kind of survivor's guilt over not struggling with online school because my child, who's still in high school, had already opted for a different kind of instructional online school before the pandemic started. I have watched my friends, my family, many of you be parent coaches, volunteer teachers, and even some working for the salary actual educators. And then some have done both, Renee. Mother's Day, for all of us involved with this service right now, will be some time to think about something larger than ourselves and our own feelings about the day. It's something we can do all together, regardless of our feelings around mothers, regardless of our feelings about this day. We can all think about how the pandemic has made us aware of huge imbalances that face women in this country. And we can change the way we think about things as a result. We could even change our actions. For one, there's always constant imbalance in the economic outlook. We already know that in most cases, a woman only earns 70% of what a man earns for the same position. But what about those jobs where women dominate, like in providing nursing care, childcare, teaching, and food industry jobs on many levels? The rate at which they are paid is not the crisis point that I'm talking about today. What I want to talk about is that the pandemic unearthed the truth about women going through more to keep a job, to get a job, to go to their job than most men go through. Simply, the jobs where working from home is not an option, the typically female-heavy areas, have seen 3 million women leave the workforce, permanently or indefinitely, in the last year. 3 million women. You cannot go to another building for work and its paycheck if there is nobody at home to care for your child, if the daycares are closed for COVID, or they're too expensive. In February of this year, CBS News reported that, quote, "The pandemic has exacerbated and shed light on a long-standing problem, which is lack of policies that enable folks to balance caregiving responsibilities and work responsibilities," said Jocelyn Fry, a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress, who focuses on work-family balance and pay equity. She goes on to say, women, and women of color in particular, overwhelmingly occupy so-called essential jobs at nursing homes and grocery stores, for example, that require them to physically show up at work. Many are also parents with young children at home who need constant care and oversight. Think of jobs in healthcare, grocery stores, and other essential functions of life. By and large, we disproportionately see women in many of those low-paid jobs. She goes on to say women are often in a bind in terms of being able to figure out, how do I juggle this work where I have to go? I can't work from home, but my kids are at home, Fry said. In many cases, the answer is, I can't. That's the end of the quote from CBS News. Now, during this pandemic, I've certainly done my share of real life daily work. But really, I've been doing so much thinking and reading, maybe even more than before the pandemic, trying to understand my place in the order of things. As a woman, an American, a white person, a minister, a mom, a wife, all the things, wondering how we are all coming through this. What will life be like henceforth? This has occupied a lot of my time. Mother's Day seems like a good chance to chat with you about some of these thoughts. Think about brunch, especially this year on Mother's Day, when we worry about vaccinations and openings and such. I'm staying home for brunch, by the way. Last year, we all knew that it wasn't going to happen. And this year, maybe for years to come, we'll have to put a lot of thought into going out. So while we do that, let's think about women. The prophets of old spoke to the whole nation about the nation's woes and how they were out of favor. Sometimes a Bible passage gets misused, as if a singular person was supposed to absorb the news of this prophecy. But really, those warnings are meant for everybody. Well, I'm not sharing a prophecy in the first place. But second, the warning that I do see arising is like the good old days. It goes for the entire culture. Generalities are not helpful. They are not part of a prophecy. Men and women have accountability for how women in any culture are held. For this service, you are not a man or a woman. You are simply in this culture. And you can change your thoughts on how women in the culture of UUFE or of the US or whatever group you're thinking of, you can change your thoughts on how women are held. Do it, starting on Mother's Day. For one thing, and I'm going to, uncharacteristically for me, talk about heterosexual relationships for just a minute. They are 90% of the population. In heterosexual relationships, there are domestic abuse cases. There are in most relationships. Not in the relationships. I'm not going to have you stop the camera, but I'm doubling back on myself. What I want to say is any kind of relationship can experience domestic abuse. I'm talking about in heterosexual cases where most of the studies are. Most of the studies that have been done on domestic violence, 97% of the perpetrators are men, 97% of the victims are women. Please do not write to me about the involvement of children or couples that are not heterosexual. I understand we're all damaged by this. Nobody wins in domestic violence cases. But the point I want to bring up here is that in heterosexual couples, married or not, when violence occurs, it is mostly men. Too many websites exist to support these numbers. During lockdown, my philosophy brain kept wondering, will these incidents of harm increase because of being together more, or will they go down because controlling men have more control? Or will it be some unexpected statistic? I hope that it goes down. We'll see. Also, many of you know I have a trans daughter. She has not loved this pandemic, but while in lockdown, at least she has been free to be herself. She always is, at school, at church, everywhere she goes. But many LGBTQ kids are closeted at home, meaning they are not free about their gender or their orientation, but they're out at school with their friends, maybe even their teachers. It's not a great situation, but it's true. So what about them during the pandemic? And besides the fact that I talk about LGBTQ people all the time, why am I mentioning them when I mention women and domestic violence? I'll get to that. My warning to the nations looks like this. The role and identity of women has kept women down and also has spread hate, fear, and violence toward women. This is true for communities of LGBTQ people too, where the heteronormative, meaning people who assume that the normal way of being is heterosexual in a man and woman couple, where the heteronormative and incorrect, by the way, understanding of people who are LGBTQ is that either men are trying to act like women, which is subject to violence, or women are not acting like properly subservient wives and mothers, which is subject to violence. Men and women, and all you non-binary pals too, be aware of your behaviors and how anti-woman culture can make us believe something is right and true that doesn't have to be true and probably was never right. For instance, think about the image of a woman cooking family meals. I love to cook. I love cooking family meals. I love going out for meals. This is where the brunch idea comes into focus. There is nothing inherently bad about a woman feeding her family. If she wants the night off, there's restaurants or drive-through. I mean, other people could cook too. But let's talk about going out for dinner. Most of the people who work in fast food are women, 51.2%. Men come in at 43.5% in restaurants, so I'm guessing that there's some non-binary pals in there too. 71% of servers are women, and in restaurants that are not fast food, overall 53% of workers are women. Now think about all these women, and if they don't have childcare, they can't go to their jobs. Would you give your order to a woman who had a toddler on her hip? I would, but she wouldn't go to work with a toddler because you can't get anything done. But anyway, so you've got an industry full of women who can't go to work because there's nobody taking care of their children and their children aren't in school. So we get really long lines at drive-through restaurants. And among those of us who have been brave to eat inside of restaurants, at restaurants that are open, that didn't close down during the pandemic, we can expect slower service in general. Now personally, I don't mind any of this. If I have the time to wait in line, I do. And if not, I deal with it. But I've started thinking, what will the long-lasting meaning be? As I take my Diet Coke cup and fill it up with Diet Coke from home because there's no way I'm waiting in line for a drink, I think, what does this mean long term? When women cannot get to their jobs, they don't make as much money. But they're also not spending money on childcare. And I understand there are women who work who don't have children. I get it. But I'm picturing the whole scenario. It could be that the fast food industry just dries up, or that eventually men will take those jobs, but only after the pay rate goes up. In turn, when women do not return to their jobs in restaurants or fast food because they cannot afford childcare, well, then the women making money from providing childcare will also be unemployed. 97% of childcare jobs in this country are held by women, with the median age being 33. Were you thinking it was going to be like 20? Like only young people do this? 33 is young too. But anyway, the median age is 33, and 40% of the 97% of childcare jobs are women of color. when these women were taking care of children, many, if not most, were also caring for their own kids while making extra money. 3 million women left the workforce in the last year. 3 million. Are they all staying home? It reminds me of the day in my 20s when I realized during rush hour that I was struggling to get to a job so that I could get a paycheck and pay for the car I was driving. To get to work, it goes on. It's a bad cycle. I realized if I didn't have the car and I didn't have the job, I could be more free. That's when I went to college. Maybe as a nation, we're deciding to be more free by being with our own kids, cutting out the economics of it all. It's time we think more about women and women's struggles and the control that we actually have over the nation's economy. Here's what Forbes wrote in July 2020. Unfortunately, mothers are still shouldering the bulk of the caregiving, even though most fathers are now at home full-time. Is that true? Are most fathers home full-time? Anyway, as unpaid caregivers, women are still performing 76.2 of total hours of unpaid care work, more than 3 times as much as men, according to the International Labor Organization, the ILO. Now this is a really interesting paragraph that comes next in this article from Forbes. Almost half of fathers with children under the age of 12, however, have contended in a recent survey that they're spending more time on childcare than their spouses. Yet, only 3% of wives reported that their spouses are doing more. In this culture, perhaps men and women understand differently what constitutes a day's work. Nothing nefarious, just different. Until I look at that a little bit more and I realize, 97% of domestic violence is aimed at women from men. And on all of these websites with their terrible statistics, there's another truth. The most violent time for a woman who has so far survived domestic violence is when she has actually made the plan to leave and is going to leave. An abuser is never really out of control, even though it's what they say. They're firmly in control. So when that abuser realizes she's really going to leave and he won't be able to control her anymore, it becomes the most dangerous time in her life. If he can no longer have control, he would rather she not ever have the chance to be free. Not only is this true of domestic violence cases, but among mass shooters who are also predominantly men, they often start their psychotic break by taking the life of a woman in their life. Being a woman in this culture is risky. As the pandemic changes life as we've known it, maybe even shifts which parts of culture have power, women are at risk. So why am I saying this terrible stuff on Mother's Day? It's because women are becoming more free, and I spread hope for a living. Women might just let industries die off so they can be with their kids. Also, the pandemic calls into question already complicated relationships with money that so many Americans have. This means that as the patriarchy, the white male dominant culture, dies or loses control, and all of its societal norms embraced by all the genders as normative, those norms get called into question, well, it's like when women leave abusive men. It's highly dangerous. Watching patriarchy die on Mother's Day is thrilling, but also it's dangerous. We will see, and are already seeing, women leave the workplace. Laws regarding women making their own choices, like Roe v. Wade, are being threatened by people who want the dominant culture to continue. This is a Mother's Day sermon because women are mothers and women are in danger. We have a chance to course correct. This is my hope. All of us have the choice to remember this sermon and read up on those statistics. When we have any chance to speak up for women as a whole, or even if you're in a situation where you're speaking up for one particular woman who's in danger, anywhere from a conversation with neighbors, to voting, to listening with sharpened ears, we should do that. Every time we have the chance to think about how the culture treats women, and we have the opportunity to look at how we participate in it and change if we need to. And after we've looked at it, we can do better. No matter what our gender or parental status, and we could even do that over brunch. I'm glad you could be with us today, and our benediction comes from the poet May Sarton. I've definitely been doing a lot of planting and gardening. I hope that you are too. And May Sarton tells us and reminds us, help us to be the always hopeful gardeners of the Spirit, who know that without darkness, nothing comes to birth, as without light, nothing flowers. Blessed be. Amen. Go in peace.